Lucy Walker, thank you so much for being with us.
Hello, thank you so much for sitting through it. It's a long and big one, and there's so many good things to do on a Friday night. So thank you so much for screening it and for sitting there. And can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you fine. It's great.
I really had this yearning to understand, and not superficially, what was happening. And I think that was also part of my quest to explore the world, using film as my day job, but to understand, this environment. And I never think of myself exactly as a kind of, I didn't set out to be an environmental filmmaker. I just make films about the most important and interesting things that I love that nobody else seems to have gotten to the bottom of yet. And when I moved to California, I kept looking around for a film that would explain this landscape and these fires to me, because it was so striking to me that the hillside was on fire. And that was not what I was used to in London and also New York. I went to NYU for grad school and lived there. And of course, in those places, we think of as fire as a sort of medieval problem, like the Great Fire of London, as I mentioned. We've solved that stuff, haven't we, in the modern world? And I was so perplexed, and that kind of cognitive dissonance that I was experiencing was a deeper clue. I've come to sort of trust that when you have a feeling that you're not getting it, that there's that's a clue that there's a kind of some discoveries to be made. If you kind of pull on that thread and tug, you're gonna unravel some secrets that you weren't aware of. And I hadn't understood initially that it wasn't just climate change. I had assumed really that driving these fires, you could pretty easily conclude that it was climate change. And I was going to make a short film, a nice short film about just one fire, the Thomas Fire, which at the time was the biggest fire in California history. And I had some friends who were residents and friends who were firefighters. And what they were going through was so extraordinary. And my heart was breaking for them every day. They were fighting or evacuating. I'm not sure whether their homes would survive. And it was so moving to me. And getting to know the firefighters and having some friends who were involved, I thought, my gosh, somebody's got to actually look at what they're really doing, and not just the kind of superficial heroism stuff, because they are superficially heroes, but what's more deep as well about that. And so I thought that was going to be it. And I thought it would be also really cool to make a film about my own environment, because I've been lucky and made all these incredible films. Well, I think they're incredible because I had incredible experiences as well making them, but I got to go to Brazil and Mongolia and Tibet and all these places I dreamed of going, and longed to meet some locals and understand some of the stories. And I had these incredible experiences, but in a way I'd never been to me. I wanted to kind of bring it home. And for me, this was an opportunity to look at climate change as it was affecting my own world. And I just, nobody else had done it yet. So I thought, well, all these fantastic documentaries in the world that really help me understand things. Wouldn't that be great if someone could understand, wildfires? If a documentary could help really illuminate this for me, I guess I'm going to be the one that makes it, because I am the one that makes these environmental films that don't really mean to be environmental, but actually really probably are. So that's the long answer, I suppose.
Well, how perfect that we're screening it on Earth Day. It's a perfect commemorative, and so that's terrific. Absolutely. But you found a group of people in the midst of this destruction that were very meaningful, and several of them, they had conflicting opinions and stories. So can you tell us a little bit about that, how you found them, put them together, got them to talk to you?
Well, I love just talking to people and finding out their stories. And I really credit those people, because that is a rare gift of being able to share what you're going through with such vulnerability and generosity that the audience is going to really be able to relate and connect. And I've learned making documentaries that casting, you know, people think about casting in fiction movies, but I always think, oh, that's easy, you know. And when you cast an actor, you're giving them the lines and telling them what to do. When you're casting real people, you know, it's not just that they're not trained for this and this isn't their job. It's also that it's not just the person, it's also their story and their moment and their ability to give us the privilege of sharing these intense moments with them. And that is astonishing feat of kind of courage. And I think people sometimes have this instinct that to share will help others. And it's a great gift that in their suffering, they know that sharing, while difficult, is the very best way to connect and help others who have similar struggles as we all do. So I really applaud that, and I'm kind of always tuning in for that. That's sort of my job, and I've had a lot of experience with it, and I really enjoy that because it's also just about meeting people and sizing things up and trying to understand what's happening and how to convey it also in film language. So I'm very much a filmmaker, very much trained filmmaker, but kind of getting to do it in this kind of martial art of thinking on the spot. And so what's interesting about this film is actually I let you into my process quite a lot. You know, you hear my voice, and if you know, for example, that conversation that opens the movie where you hear me talking with Brad, you know, the guy with the blind mom and his blind mom. When I meet them, that's the very first time I rocked up. And this is not a situation where I'm not somebody who has like a team of researchers. This is me and my friend, the cameraman. And in this case, it was a cameraman. Sometimes it's a camera woman. In this case, it was me and my friend Baptiste. And we did have somebody else recording sound that day, but sometimes it's me doing that, or the sound recorder still between us. And sometimes we have more people as well, depending on the situation. But in this case, it was like the three of us driving around a disaster zone. And one thing that helped me have a conversation that I think was off the bat, I think that conversation got right in, as you saw, to I feel like that conversation went deep immediately, was because I knew what I was looking at. I had spent months talking to people, residents and firefighters affected by fires, and I knew that to stay and fight for that house, there had to be an emotional connection to that house. I knew that if I asked, why did you stay? There would be a reason that wasn't just, you know, I didn't feel like calling my insurance company after it had burned down. You know, there had to be a story there and something extraordinary. So I was able in that moment, because I'm also like nervous, shy person, you know, and I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm also rocking up to a house with a guy with a lot of guns and dogs, which is not my normal world. You know, I'm totally not in Kansas anymore. I'm a, you know, a lovely, urban, educated, European liberal, you know, in a very much the red hill and the blue state over there in paradise. And there's a lot of big dogs, and we're in a zombie movie set, you know, with not a living person for miles, just smoke and you know, ashtrays where there were houses, and it was just a mad scene. We just, it was very, very intense. And I was able to say, why did you save your house? And he was able to share about his wife passing away. And you know, I talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people didn't make the movie, and the people that did make the movie were the people like that really had a story, that really weren't afraid to share it. And that also the story, I felt in his case, there were a lot of details about the story I felt that were very important to share, you know, that were very representative. I wanted to make sure and include all the details that would really kind of equip the audience to actually understand what's going on, because I had a huge long journey of understanding what was going on, and kind of what you see in the film is the tip of the iceberg, and also the kind of the clues that worked out, you know, because I had a lot of bum leads, you know, oh my gosh, it's all about the traffic zoning. well, or it's the bad mayor or whatever it is. You know, a lot of people had theories about what had gone wrong with these fires. So, you know, what you saw in the fire, even in the, you know, chaos of the emergency, all those details were really the most important things I felt for the audience to understand about how those events actually transpired, what's actually going on with the firefighters, what's actually going on with the residents, what is actually going on in these very precious and frightening moments. So there's a lot more thought that it's not, I didn't just, you know, grab these things. And particularly that story with Brad, I felt like when in the end, of course, you don't know what's going to happen in 2 years' time. You don't realize he's going to fall in love with someone who lived down the way and find new love. And what I loved about that story, though, was I did feel like it chimed with the bigger picture story of, you know, that we human beings can be incredibly resilient, and we can find new love and new hope and a future and shoots in the ashes. And I was like, wow, you know, you couldn't have scripted that, universe. Well, thank you.
I introduced the film by saying, you know, that it is pretty dramatic and compelling, but there is hope. I have one quick one, Lucy.
Yeah.
And that is at the end of the film, when you are in these town meetings, how you captured, just because you recorded these meetings, that people, as devastated as they were really unwilling to go with a new regulation to restrict how they lived, knowing full well that if they didn't give that 5 feet, chances of their houses burning down, that was going to happen. So just, if you could tell us just a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, I've never put myself in a movie before. I like to be behind the camera, but
in the front row.
Yeah, but we didn't film
and the white jacket.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. But the cameras were very much pointed at other people during the whole meeting. But when we were editing, it was one of those things where the camera for a minute was turned on me when we were changing the batteries or something. And I think we were laughing in the editing room. Oh gosh, look at my face. My face really tells a story about what's happening in that scene. Because, you know, I was really stunned in that moment about what was happening. And, you know, when you're editing, you're always trying to kind of find the material, I suppose, that really conveys what you think is really happening in the scene. And the funny thing is, the thing that most conveyed what was happening in that scene was my, you know, funny expression. So, you know, you're trying to kind of explain, because it's kind of, you know, it's a boring town council meeting and there's a lot of like details, and that's not like easy to get the audience to kind of understand. It's a kind of subtle verbal thingy, you know. And so actually I kind of realized, to my kind of slight horror, that that the best shot was actually the shot of my sort of bitchy face. And so we kind of went with that. But what I think also gives me hope, back to your lovely point, and kind of because it's Earth Day, is that as I said in the movie, but in that separation, when climate change, you know, I hope we're going to be doing everything we can to turn it around, but that is a big thing. But what is interesting about what I learned, as you can tell, is that there are things that we can do. And even if we're not doing them in the immediate term, and it is pretty astonishing, then I feel like just as we become aware of that, we become aware of the kind of levers, and we also become aware of this funny human psychology that we've got. And I felt like I'd set out to make a film about climate change. So I feel like there is hope, because it's not just climate change, and the other things that we can do are actually going to be much easier, as this wonderful Steve Pine says in the movie. You know, we can build better structures in better places and be more mindful about, you know, how we live, etc. We can do those things quite easily. If not this year, I think we're getting there, and that does give me a lot of hope. And it was interesting to me, because I set out to make this climate change in my own backyard movie. And then I went through a couple of years of thinking like, oh my gosh, it's not a climate change movie at all. It's about logging, and it's about human psychology, and it's about California and being European and amazing indigenous practices. And it's about so much. And then I came back around and thought, oh my gosh, it's so much more a film about climate change than I ever dreamed, because for me, it explained what is going on with climate change, which is that human beings are really spectacularly rotten at getting together around really complicated things. And right. And when something's right ahead of us or guaranteed to happen, that's much easier. But when something might happen, in the future, but it's very difficult, it's very hard to create political will, or it's very hard to kind of amass the support to get things done. And I think understanding that, though, does give me hope, because I think the first step is actually just getting that right. And so anyway, so that was where I came out. I was like, oh no, this is my climate change movie. And what gives me hope is just that I came to that better awareness, because I do trust that when as we become more aware, we can we're smart, evolving adaptive creatures, and as we become more aware of where the real problems are, I think we'll find real solutions.
Right. Well, I think you accomplished it, Lucy. And the film was just a perfect tribute to Earth Day. So we thank you very, very much. And for coming to us from California, we appreciate it. And how about the audience telling Lucy how much we appreciate it?
Thank you so much. And if anyone has any more questions or wants to say thank you or anything like that, I'm Lucy Walker Film on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and everything. It's always Lucy Walker, my name, and then film, all one word. And I'm always delighted to hear from everyone. So
thank you. Thank you, Lucy. Bye-bye.